So, look, yes, we talked about this story early in the week, a little bit of good reporting, managing to dig up some access to information documents. And by the way, it might be worth pointing out the original request for the access to information documents had all this good stuff redacted.
Yes.
They had to ask again and then discovered that no, Quebec Health, Montreal Public Health were never on board with the idea of a curfew, the one that was imposed at around Christmas time.
It's honestly outrageous. It is outrageous.
It is now when we know the real facts behind it, and it was clearly political, had nothing to do with science. Well, there are some who think we should do more on this, including a Quebec lawyer who's asking our Supreme Court, Canada's Supreme Court, over the constitutionality of this implementation of a curfew. He believes it's a violation, or was a violation of our rights and freedoms. He's on the line right now. This is William DESROCHERS. Monsieur DESROCHERS, thanks for being here.
Hello, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Some people will ask, okay, yes, it was a terrible decision. Yes, we were basically lied to and trying to come up with a reason why we needed it, but why do we need to pursue it any further?
Why we didn't pursue it any further?
Why do you need to pursue this any further? It's over, it's done with, it might have been a mistake. What is this going to achieve now?
Well, what I was hoping to achieve actually is for, in a legal perspective, what I'm complaining about is the fact that the judgment that was rendered was not a judgment on the merits. It was a judgment, a safeguard order. So it was just to suspend the measure until the final judgment is rendered. However, the problem we have during this pandemic for challenges of COVID measures is that these measures are temporary. So if you want to obtain a judgment on the merits, you need to wait 1 to 2 years. Well, the odds are the measure is going to be lifted by then, and then the government, they argue that it's become theoretical. So what I was hoping is to convince the Supreme Court to render a judgment that in the future, for any similar cases, that when you know that a measure is going to be temporary, the court, they must go a bit further. So we have to go faster. We need a final hearing in a timely manner. Otherwise, this is not justice. So no judgment can be rendered, so you cannot control the government. So that's why I wanted to go to the Supreme Court. Now, I don't know if you are aware, but it was an application to leave to appeal, so you need to obtain permission to go to the Supreme Court. So this morning it was dismissed. So the case is closed now, once for good.
It is.
Wow, so much for that.
We knew it was going to be happening today, that the Supreme Court of Canada was going to decide today whether or not they would hear the case. How are you feeling about that decision then, Maître DESROCHERS?
Well, it's when you apply to the Supreme Court, they select only a few cases. So this is not a surprise. It's like winning a lottery when they select your case. I was hoping that they would be interested into that, but at some point I couldn't understand. At least I'm happy because they will hear the case about the challenge and the Quebec law concerning the right to grow your own cannabis. So there you go. If you're going to have curfews, at least you're going to be able to grow your own weed.
Well, that's handy, yeah, sure.
Some compensation there.
By the way, does this mean it's the end of the road, or where do you go with this now that they've decided they're not going to hear the case?
Well, for me, that's it. If I discontinued before the Superior Court, I didn't see any point to be heard in spring 2022 about the challenge of the curfew in 2021 and then going in appeal. So drag it on for years using my time, my expenses. So I prefer to move on with my life. However, there was another case similar to mine. It was filed by Mr. Marc Boris Saint-Maurice. And he resumed his case in the Superior Court. And I don't know if it was discontinued, if it became theoretical. I spoke to him sometime in January, and he was hoping to have a court date sometime soon. So maybe he will pursue this, and we will obtain some sort of answers in the end.
Did this new information that came out, making it perfectly clear that Dr. Horacio Arruda, representing public health, was not on board with this decision, did that change anything, or wouldn't that have helped your case?
Well, definitely, but personally, I already knew that the government of Quebec didn't have any studies or data. They didn't provide any in my case, and they were initially they were given 5 months to provide some sort of expertise to justify their decision. After not 5 months, 5 weeks. So after the 5 weeks, they applied to court to obtain an extension of 2 months. And then at the very end of those 2 months, they filed an application that the case be dismissed because it became theoretical. So they actually never provided any expertise. I know they hired someone that was not in the government, so they apparently they paid someone, but the report was never provided.
You know, I was going to say one day we'll look back on all this, not just this decision, but so many others that a lot of people said, why are they doing this? And, you know, now, of course, calling into question the fact that maybe we didn't have the science behind it to allow those things to be put in place to begin with. I'm sure a lot of people probably already believe that, but it's a shame this didn't get heard. It would have been interesting to see how it would have proceeded. So,
and what lesson do you? Sorry, go on.
Well, the problem is I'm involved in the other cases about challenging COVID measures, and you know, I'm in contact with many scientists, and most of them are afraid to speak or they are being silenced. But it's not as clear as what the government says. A lot of it is political, but the courts, there's the procedure that I talked to you about, that the time it takes to obtain a final hearing is just too long and not adapted to control the government during a pandemic. And this is sad because what they've done, it caused a lot of harm. And I think we're not done with this. But I'm hoping that we're going to have answers from a political point of view, some sort of investigation. I don't know what, but we need some answers here.
And then in turn, do you expect that we will have more cases like this as we find out more about how the government managed the pandemic and made those decisions?
Well, we are probably going to obtain more information after the fact. And when we're going to look backwards, it's easier to have a judgment after the fact. Sure. When it's happening, a pandemic, people are afraid, concerned, and a lot of people are frozen by fear. But after the fact, we'll see them. I'm hoping that in the future, things like that don't happen again. And it's also the way it was managed. The public health emergency there, and the fact that they governed by decree. There was no democratic debate. All of this is very concerning decisions being made behind closed doors. This is not normal to do that for 2 years, and it's still ongoing. I mean, in between two waves, it's not supposed to be an emergency.
Well, I hope more is made of this as election time approaches. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
William DESROCHERS, Quebec lawyer, found out today, actually just earlier today, that the Supreme Court would not hear his challenge of Quebec's imposition of a curfew.